Yesterday, we had an amazing day. We talked about transmedia storytelling, and we learned a lot how to integrate audience in storylines, how to make them to co-creators. And we also talked about content of the stories. Very often it was connected to our theme Hope and Utopias. We discussed new models of societies where audience can take a part of bringing them in with own proposals, with their ideas, with their creativity. Today, we want to be more focused on the use of immersive technology, because that is the core of the work in our network. PlayOn is a large corporation project funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union, the main culture program of the EU. 9 theaters from 9 different European countries have joined forces in PlayOn under the subtitle New Storytelling with Immersive Technologies. And you see that were the 2 topics for our 2 days. Each of our PlayOn theater is collaborating with a local tech university to ensure a transfer of digital knowledge. And we, the artists, are contributing with content, the tech partners with their digital expertise. A win-win situation. PlayOn is designed to understand, learn, test, and apply the potential of immersive. And that will bring us to the topic for today. Our host today is coming from one of the university, the main university partner in PlayOn, the University of York. Marian Ursu, Professor of Interactive Media at the University of York, will be your host and guide you through the day. And Marian and me, we had many talks before we did the application for PlayOn. And so that's why Marian is really a very important part of the whole PlayOn idea. And I'm very, very happy that you, Marian, will guide us today through the program. So that was my job for today, Marian. Now it's yours.
Thank you very much, Doug, for a warm introduction, and it's a pleasure to be part of this fantastic event. Just 2 words about me. I work at the University of York at the moment. I direct a large research center called Digital Creativity Labs. And we have other large initiatives. I'm just going to put some labels: XR Stories, Sign, multi-million pounds investments in research and development, where creative practice meets technology, and also more generically about the creative industries themselves. We have a fantastic lineup today too. I'm going to give you a slightly more detailed overview of what's coming, such that you can choose, but hopefully you'll have time to attend everything. The first session, which we're going to start soon, looks at VR and AR production. It will start with Momchil Alexiev from Bulgaria, who will set the scene with a keynote on some more general issues, unpacking the overloaded concept of immersion, inquiring about why should we make VR film, and addressing the role of experiential solutions in creative practice. At the end, we'll have time for some questions and answers. And then after a short break, we'll move on to a panel consisting of Chong Chien and Derrick from Singapore, and Anna West and David Callanan from UK. in which we'll discuss more specific issues related to VR and AR production. The panel conversation will be seeded by two shorter presentations, one by Chien and Derrick, who will talk about their journey into developing a novel genre which emerges at the intersection of immersive theater, immersive media, gameplay, and storytelling. And then Anna West and David Callanan, in a similar way, will present their journey in creating a new genre, which followed a play from stage onto VR. And then we'll open the stage for Q&A. In the next session, session 5, running from 2 p.m. GMT to 4 p.m. GMT, we will focus more on applied immersive technologies. We'll look at a variety of immersive technologies. Catherine Allen from UK will give a keynote on audiences. So rather than talking about technology, she'll address the question of what do audiences want from the new VR medium and a new immersive media. And then we'll move into a very fast-paced presentation of various technologies and their applications. And just listen to this: using Pepper's holosuit to build mixed reality setups on stage, using binaural, underwater, and 3D recordings to place the audience at the very center of a fictional narrative. Location-based AR to challenge the line between reality and fiction, and virtuality and physicality, the use of AR glasses in Europe's first AR performance with live actors, audiovisual poetry in VR, defining a virtual space between 2D and 3D to deliver online festivals. Just some very, very exciting topics. Do come along and be a witness of. And after that, you'll have the opportunity to meet the speakers themselves in separate rooms. The final session of today, session 6, which runs from 6 p.m. GMT to 8 p.m. GMT, targets VR productions at scale. Noah Nelson from the States will open with a keynote presenting the fundamental crafts of the performing arts as the missing piece in the puzzle of developing new genre-defying experiences into the various realities facilitated by immersive technologies. And after that, we will move on to two specific endeavors, one presented by the Finnish National Opera and Ballet's Opera Beyond, exploring possibilities provided by emerging technologies for performing arts, a talk by Anastasina Haspari, and then the Royal Shakespeare Company's VR production Dream, maybe many of you have seen it already, which has recently streamed all over the world, a talk given by Sarah Ellis. And after this, around 8:30 p.m., we'll have 30 minutes for Q&A for the great speakers. But let us now focus and come back to our current session. It starts with a talk by Momchil Alexiev with the title, "What Does VR Want?" And I don't quite know how what intonation should I use? Is it, "What does VR want?" Momchil you'll tell me, Momchil, later how to actually read that question. Momchil is a graduate from La Sapienza University in Rome and the Netherlands Film Academy. And over the past 14 years, he worked as a filmmaker and theater scenographer. His artistic research as founder of Active Film Studio is focused on establishing new organic connections between performance, cinematic space, and video projections. In his questions, the notion of spectatorship in the context, no, I'm sorry, backtrack. He does question the notion of spectatorship in the context of virtual reality and immersive media. His interactive films have been shown at festivals like VR Days and the Seattle International Film Festival. And also Momchil is the founder of the research platform VR Lab BG and a Sundance Institute alumni. And in his talk, he's going to ask the question, why should we make VR films? What do we mean by immersiveness, development of ideas in space, and experiential solutions? Momchil, I think I will say no more, and I'll hand over to you, and we look forward to an exciting presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Marius, and thank you, Derrick. And it's amazing lineup. I'm really looking forward to attend and to think together with you. And I think platforms like the one that we are in today, and this possibility to talk about immersive storytelling is so important today, so crucial. There is not many places where we can discuss what is going on with immersiveness and with this new room in the house of storytelling. So I'm going to start my presentation. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm gonna tell you very shortly how I got to this VR idea and how and why was I interested in it. What brought me to it. Now, we are part of this platform VR Lab BG. I founded it 5 years ago, and we develop VR products. We do a lot of events and a lot of meetings, but mainly we're focused on research and storytelling and production. So we build a community, but we also try to propel on this side of the continent collaborations and development of ideas. Therefore, we work with many festivals also here, with Sofia Film Festival, with Kinomania, which is the oldest festival in Bulgaria, and so on. We do produce also some research paperwork. This is a collaboration with the Turin University we did, where we produced several papers on the cross point between games and video and immersive storytelling, coming up with some methods to study virtual reality, and from the semiotic perspective, but also introducing a method on how to understand it in terms of science and in terms of sense making, how to approach it. These are some of the festivals we did with the Sofia Film Fest. We do it also this year. We make a selection. We do also produce talks and meetings during the VR Hub. So how did I get to this idea? Basically, I started as a scenographer in Italy. I was working on theater performances, a lot of projection mapping, a lot of installations, a lot of interactive installations, and so on. So for years, I've been standing in front of a scene, a stage, with bodies that would sort of emerge and come in and out of this digital landscape, and sort of started coming together for me also in the way I was writing stories that, you know, I may be interested in something that is in between theater and film. I didn't know what it was. So I started doing some installations like this one, which is called Quintetto. It was about fishes who are followed by a camera, and each fish makes a sound and a music. And we have five tones, and each tone follows a fish, and according to the movement of the fish, it changes. So one sits and listens to an interactive concert made by 5 fish. That's why it was called Quintetto. So in this line of thought, I was doing these performances with a lot of projections, with a lot of multiple mapping projections, so on. This is very shortly an Italian performance based on Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So I'm just going to continue because it's longer and longer. Now I started wondering, how do I do this? You know, what is in immersive storytelling? How do I approach it? Where do I do it? And this is where I proposed the project to in the master's program of the Film Academy in Amsterdam. And there I started working with holographic images, I realized there is not really holographic images for the storytelling I want to tell that I can use today. This is back in 2012, by the way, so it's 9 years ago already. Holography was behind then, not that today is really usable on stage, but I was asking myself, hey, what is the instrument that I can use? What is the question that and I realized virtual reality, which I didn't like in the beginning, by the way, was the instrument that I could use. And then gradually I started realizing, aha, with the glasses, I can start asking the question which interests me, which was the question of spectatorship. What is happening with the condition of being a spectator today? What is changing? Is there a reason for virtual reality to be there as a tool for storytelling? Is there a unique quality to it, unique semiotic system, to use Roland Barthes' definition of semiotic systems in reference to photography and cinema? Is there something that if the virtual reality and immersive technologies offer that is absolutely unique to its process of sense making to the spectator? So I started asking myself this question. Everyone was also asking me this question: why do you do virtual reality? Don't you? Is this more impressive film, or what? Why do we do it? So I came up with this very simple. I'm gonna very shortly sort of pitch it to you. My proposal for why is there a reason to use immersive technologies. I came up with this proposal and explanation for it, and it's sort of two-sided explanation. And I said to myself, okay, hey, if we take everything from virtual reality in terms of effects, reduce interactiveness to maximum, visual, audio, everything that we can take off, is there something that remains, there is a core that makes it a unique system of sense making for the spectator? My proposal for this was that what happens when we put the glasses, a different part of our brain is activated. Namely, the part that understands space, time, is suddenly directly activated by the glasses. We make sense of the experience by turning around and by interacting with it. This is something that doesn't happen in any other medium. It doesn't happen the same in film, doesn't happen the same in music, books, theater. Because it combines the spatial experience, it introduces the direct identification process for the spectator, and it's much more actively interactive than most of the mediums that we use. So we are immersed, and we understand the experience spatially, and we interact with it. We are inside somewhere. So this is my proposal, is a unique reference point which gives the possibility to talk about the condition of spectatorship. By the way, this is not something that is completely new, or something that it is suddenly introduced in our technological frame. It completely makes sense that we sort of discuss more actively interactive and immersive storytelling today, simply due to the technological development. We've had glasses before, in the 90s, in the 70s. Today, they work better. There's more content that actually work, the price is lower, so one reason. Second reason, the idea of immersive storytelling. Why should we not be one person telling the story and everyone's sitting and we listen to it and we discuss ourselves as a group of people through the story in this format? We listen, you tell us a story, sometimes a little bit of interaction. What was the other idea? And the other idea is very, very old. It goes even back to Plato and his choreographic society, where he was imagining a storytelling process in which everyone is dancing together and telling stories one to another, and there is not one main figure, and everyone sort of encloses into being a co-author of the story. We can follow this very clearly in the history of theater, in the history of experimental filmmaking, in many genres, which is accompanied, by the way, to this with the search for a ever more realistic image. And when I mean ever more realistic, I'm talking about the 3D images from the mid-centuries. I'm talking about the Lumiere brothers who filmed also a 3D film. I'm talking about, even if we want Grotowski's performances where people would be on the stage as well. So the idea of involving the spectator, making him inseparable part of the performance, has been there all the time, essentially. All the time. It just hasn't been mainstream. So it only makes absolute perfect sense that today this direction is opening more, and the way we exchange stories and we understand stories has shifted from the screen to the small screen to the computer to whole lots of other places. So we're in a different paradigm, which is very exciting to me. Therefore, the next question I was asking myself: okay, we have the technological history, we have the backstory of the idea. There have been so many examples. What happens today with virtual reality? How do we approach it? How should we think about it in terms of storytelling? I started thinking it from the cinema perspective, which evolved gradually in the search of what is this interactive story now and today. Very short video. So why do I show this video? Two reasons. One is because I've had this question so many times about immersive and virtual reality experiences and the strength of the cognitive experience for spectators and so on and so on. So one important thing that I emphasize on is that immersive and virtual, this is just another instrument. It's like a pencil. It's like the camera. It's like the violin. The only important thing to know about it is what are its core modules of sense making. What are the points from which to start creating in order to understand the instrument. So that's one. What are the main points for it? How should we approach the storytelling, the user experience? What is going to be the user experience? And the next super important thing to remember is that virtual reality is the first medium that introduces direct experience as a dramaturgical instrument, is a dramaturgical module for creating the story. By direct experience, I mean that it's not the frame, the lighting of the frame, the words that we hear in film or the words that we read in a book that transmit to us. We read a mountain and then we imagine a mountain, or we see a mountain on the film screen, and we do the additional work. In virtual reality, for the first time, what happens is that we have the modules from film and from music and from spatial experience, but suddenly we have also the direct experience, or at least our brain tells us, hey, I know that I'm not in this room, but it looks like I'm on a mountain. So for the first time, this direct experience is not the whole thing, but it's a very, very crucial and central part of what immersive storytelling is. So I started wondering, okay, if that's the case, cinema, film, how do we do it? How do I lead the spectator? How do I even talk about immersive cinema? Again, this is 2013 when I started asking myself this question. And what I did is it was a immersive film in which essentially we follow the production of an immersive film. So there is an actor discussing it, talking with himself, hey, I'm going to be part of this film, and how is it going to happen? Then the film happens actually, and then the actors themselves talk about the film, but that's only the video, The way it was shown, it was in this form. It's in a cinema hall where we had several people, 7 I think it was in this session, that would watch the film at the same time, and one point view would be seen on the big screen. And the audience is divided in groups. Therefore, first the people watch the film on stage, then they exchange, and they watch other people watch the film. The reason for this whole installation, let's say, was in order to discuss with them and to talk afterwards, what is for you VR cinema? What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you think works? What do you think doesn't work? So it was very important for me back then to establish some kind of ground from which to start talking about immersiveness in virtual reality. Because there was no reference point. We talk about VR, but it's no really base on which to lead discussions. And so this was my goal with this film. It went like this: people would watch. I filmed everything, and I did a report on how long people would watch in the same direction. I've planted different points of interest. So I would watch how long it's going to take to saturate one or the other, what people choose, and so on. It was a very interesting process. You see, some of them tend to follow the same line of interest, while others choose different points. The film was 15 minutes altogether. So this is let's say how my research started. And when I came back to Sofia, I founded the platform VR Lab BG and started doing, apart from the community events and work, I started producing a lot with virtual reality. And just to tell you what happens on this side of the continent with VR, we did film a lot of commercials, an example, extreme sports, or video clips which use VR. So here I was an example multiplying these singers in one room and then playing with this notion. Just to say that, you know, using these instruments has led me to many different directions. So these are R&B singers from Sofia. Apparently, there are many medical projects as well that happen in Sofia related to virtual reality. So we participated in a hackathon initiated by one of the hospitals and a big organization called TOM. It was we created a prototype for a woman with cerebral paralysis in virtual reality, where she would replicate her exercises in VR and make it possible to compare with other people and play in the same time, or connect sort of social element to it, and also distance control and check with the doctors. We did now important thing to say, especially with these productions nowadays, is that the pipeline is not necessarily based only in Sofia. So we did a lot of international projects actually. I mean, we're based here. For example, we work with the several medical centers in Amsterdam as well after I came back. And this was for a school with, for children with autism. It was very interesting and challenging project, which, you know, really enriched us. We were making videos about the behavior of kids with autism representing their point of view, and then creating educational videos for the teachers as well in virtual reality. And this was put in one interactive VR system, so you could jump in different courses. And also, very important thing, the kids themselves were acting in the film, so there was a pedagogical side to it as well. Now, in terms of storytelling, when we get to, I've put some projects here to just to talk about the process and the way these productions are being made nowadays, because a lot has changed in terms of financing and in terms of decision making and in terms of instrument that we have. In example, interactivity has developed a lot. It has become much more accessible. Decision making and also funds and institutions started mentioning virtual reality. Even in Bulgaria, there are a few funds that already give money for VR and for immersive productions. And it's a word that people understand. It used to be a very difficult task to explain to a film fund what exactly do you want to make. They just wouldn't understand what is VR. It would be rather cut as a project rather than cut as a budget, just because it was non-intelligible for most of the committee. So this has developed. This is one project where I first encountered this importance of the pipeline and when to talk with producers and how to engage in international VR projects, how to fund them, how to approach animators and programmers, and what is the pipeline essentially. But especially the important thing here was the user experience. So the user experience solutions. How would the story unfold for the user? What would be the body movement, the body engagement? What is this interaction gonna bring to the spectator? And this is a film. I'm gonna show just these two images because it's still in production. It's filmed by Canadian Lebanese filmmaker Razan Al-Salah. We were approached by Eyal Sivan from French production company Momento and jumped in on this as creative co-producers. We went with the project on many places like ITFA, we went to Sundance, New Frontier storyline where it won. And the project, what I really liked about it was that this creator, this great filmmaker, Razan Al-Salah, she had a very clear idea about the interaction that has to be in the center of the experience. And it had to do with sitting down and especially interaction in one of the hands with the this pixelated point cloud of a street. It was about her return at home and a bit of a family story, but it was very much layered and it was really focused on this experience. So it came from the idea, and this is what we talked before the conference, which is a central question of these meetings, which I absolutely agree with, is the very fine balance between the concept, the idea about immersive storytelling, and the technology, and the right communication between the two within the process of making. So giving it enough time, making the right calls in the right moment, and never losing from sight the focus and the experiential side of it. So in this case, what I really like is that we start with the idea. It's not necessarily like this always. It can start from experimenting with the instrument, but the most successful things that we've done so far have always come with thinking through the concept, thinking through the idea, and also using virtual reality to develop the idea itself. So if we have a performance or a story, we would always think through this prism of what is the spectator experience. If movement forward is the main concept of the work, let's use, you know, clicking forward with the button, if there's a thing. Also, it shouldn't. The thing is, it doesn't have to be always virtual reality or only augmented reality. There are a lot of great examples of stories that are even via email or only with a cell phone or only through small augmented reality experiences that still are amazingly immersive, and that just happens to be the right instrument for it. So this project has to do with mapping streets of cities, making a point cloud of them. They transform from one to another, and the person is invited to really kneel down, sit, and dig in them and experience. That's the way it moves forward. The story, so it generates a motor for the story to go forward. It's not only the image, but there is also the economy of movement and the economy of walking forward and discovering each city by kneeling down and opening it and interacting with it. Here is a very interesting project I did with National Film Board of Canada, and IFA was part of it. And I did with a very good friend and colleague, Joaquin Val, he's from Argentina, and Bram Lohman, who is from Amsterdam. It's essentially a cell phone experience where you download the app Revolve, and as you start turning around, the more you turn around, the more the video develops. So the video is 60 seconds, but it doesn't really go for 60 seconds if you don't turn around. There was also a gamification element to it. So there was the economy of winning or not winning, or how long did you turn around? Did it take for you to watch the full video, and so on. So I was very curious to explore how people interact in with their cell phones and with 360 video. And the statistic was very funny. Some people really like it and start turning around like dervish style madly to watch the video. The music goes according also to your speed of movement. So this is again an example of a production that went sort of online. I went once to Amsterdam, but the other part of it was done from Sofia, Amsterdam, and Argentina. Now, how about immersive storytelling here in Sofia? I'm going to give you a couple of examples of theater performances. One is it's called Changing, and it's based on Ingmar Bergman's work, and we did a lot of video mapping here with 5 screens. The interesting part to it, except the mapping, was the interaction with cell phones. In the cell phones, there was an app with the same name of the performance. There is an instruction in the beginning, people download it, and in certain moments when we have a light, there is a development of the set and of the image that we see in the mapping into the cell phone, which would engage in different ways. It would turn their lights on, it would turn their cameras on, it would turn an animation that will scroll, will move on the stage or move in their screen or both. So we try to really expand this set design into the audience and make the cell phone more of a bridge rather than something that you have to turn off before a theater performance.
I'm sorry to step in. We're over time. If we can bring it to a close soon.
Sure. So another very short project, which was again with augmented reality. People would walk in front of galleries with this QR code, and you pick up the QR code, and there is a 360 video, and then they involve you in a performance, and the 360 video is connected to their performance. And this is Conglomerate, which was a project for the Biennale in Prague. We did the whole set of, it looks like this, with VR glasses, and people would enter in the set, a bit like this, and they would be able to watch all the best scenography performances from Bulgaria from the last 4 years. And there was a manual, one opera, puppet theater, a conventional theater, dance theater. They would choose and they would enter, and they could see, in example, 10 performances. all filmed in virtual reality. So turning around and look at the best scenographies that there have been in the last 4 years. So this is not really strictly storytelling, but it's more of a representational project, which turned out very, very interesting at the end. So this is for now. I'll be very happy to answer all your questions, and I'll be in the meeting room. Thank you for your attention, and great to be here.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. A really rich collection of examples, attractive productions, as well as inspiring work in trying to develop a theoretical underpinning for this new genre. And if I may, I start from that angle. You said in your presentation that VR has affordances that sets it aside as a medium somewhat better suited for creating immersive storytelling experiences. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you have heard this question in the past, that it is the story that actually creates the immersion. And some say that disregarding the medium, it could be even a silent movie, but if it's well crafted, we are immersed and we are in. So how do you actually see that indeed VR creates truly new opportunities for storytelling? Are there examples of new stories that emerged for VR experiences?
Of course, virtual reality doesn't automatically make an immersive story. Absolutely. Actually, there's been the percentage of bad things is much higher than the good ones. Exactly. And when I say much higher, I say maybe 95%. I mean, it's just wrong to perceive, this is, you put the glasses and there you go. No, it's just an instrument that immerses people in another place, and it's more interactive. It makes you feel as if you are somewhere else, and that's it. So to make it very simple, I mean, of course, it's so therefore, if of course you can make Romeo and Juliet, but that's not the point. The point is to come from the idea of, I want to share the story in this particular way. I want to invite you to discuss ourselves as a group of people through this story, by being together in it, by giving you the possibility to interact and to change it, and to let me know how you change it, and to discuss how we both to create a frame, to curate a frame, to architecture a frame. So I invite you somewhere where you can be interactive. From this point of view, I think, first of all, there are some good examples for that, for sure. Like if you want to go for Notes on Blindness, or Wolves in the Walls, or The Line, or yes, a few, just to mention a few, but there are already good examples that, hey, this works. It works in a different way, and it's so very curious that suddenly I have a place where I can combine images, sound, interaction, and the direct experience of being somewhere, which also means different emotional movement. But emotional movement, again, doesn't mean good story at all.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's.
So do you think there is now enough experimental work to allow people to analyze and identify cinematic devices, storytelling devices in VR, to talk about, for example, directing in VR, or we're still at a stage of discovery and we haven't got the taxonomies, the words, the sufficient examples to start to move the field forward with some more structure?
Now, a lot has changed. A lot has been done in the last 8-10 years, let's say, for sure. It's still a completely uncharted territory, though. Completely uncharted territory. First of all, we cannot really talk about VR cinema exactly anymore, because VR cinema sort of implies most of the modules coming from what we know from filmmaking, whilst it's actually just dragging behind some things from cinema, some things from theater, but it's generating a different context of thinking. Therefore, maybe it's good to talk about immersive storytelling, and say, aha, here we can talk about these elements, these elements, and these elements.
Yes.
And I think the terminology has also developed. I can see it, you know, through time. So we have some things to step on now already, but it's still, that's also the great thing about it. You can make something that's not that good, like technically, but he has a good idea. And when he has a good idea, it go to Berlinale, and people will like it because it will make sense. Yeah.
So here's another cluster of questions that all take the same angle. When we talk about cinema, there is a sense of social presence in the cinema. That's why we go, to be together and watch together a film. And we're talking about cinematic VR. And the question is, do you see in the future that cinemas would be equipped with VR or AR goggles? Each seat would have that. And a more general question is, how do you see the future of VR storytelling? Would it become a genre in its own right, as cinema is and theater?
Now, cinemas will probably never have VR glasses exactly the way we imagine. Like you go in the cinema and put it, and cinema is going to be cinema. Thank God, you know, it's kind of just the way.
The Nova project proposal where that was going to be attempted. So there was a proposal where a cinema was going to be equipped with AR glasses, but please carry on.
Yeah. Well, AR though is different than VR glasses, just to mention.
Yes.
This could be. What I think is happening and is going to happen is that this, again, logical line of thinking of creating immersive stories, whether it's going to be with these glasses or with smaller ones or with AR or with a combination, because there is a lot of multi-platform. Multi-platform, by the way, to mention, very important. It's not just it doesn't have to be self-standing and so on. So in this sense, I claim there is really a path forward to this immersive storytelling. So what exactly is going to be? Difficult to say, really, because the glasses have been changing so fast. Also, this mixed reality possibilities. So it's a little bit misleading to say, this is going to happen. I think it's going to be another genre, another room in the house of storytelling, most probably. For this simple reason, we have strived for these stories for a long time, and now technology has changed, our cultural frame has changed, our technological frame has changed, and logically, it's time to talk about this. How these stories comment on our development as society today. So it's only logical, actually.
Yes.
So I think it's gonna continue.
Now, in the same vein, there's I think someone who wants to challenge from the point of view of the purity of theater, and the question is there a core benefit to VR as compared to real life experiences? I presume in the physical space.
I would never dare or compare to theater. You know, I've grown up in the theater academy in Sofia as a kid, and I've always lived with theater. So it's you know, theater is theater. Okay, let's be clear about it. And it's not really also correct to compare them, because the real life presence, obviously, it's not really the same in virtual reality, even if you're with other people in the room. There are great examples of mixed reality and theater, though, to mention. That's also an option. I think it can be very, very interesting. I've experienced a few of those, and I like them. Not amazing, but I like them so far, the ones that I've seen. I think it's a very good idea. But it's sort of a thing of its own. Again, going back to what it essentially does. It has a direct cognitive sense making of being somewhere, but this is combined also with, if you want, text or music or images or a certain level of interaction, and this interaction, very crucial what it exactly is going to be, because there is this dichotomy between the real world and what happens in virtual reality. You move in the real world, but in VR you also move, but in a different way. So this is where it starts to be interesting. You know, my hand starts bending in virtual reality. So this is the way I move forward. Your whole process of, how am I going to understand this experience is changed. So it opens a wonderful different door. So that's
Thank you. Some of the members of the audience are kindly requesting more details about some of the productions you mentioned. The 360 video they would like to hear about, and then the work on autism, they want to hear about more. So maybe we'll find a way to post and put these links in some place. Here's another question. You spoke about user experience design and storytelling, and that was a very interesting angle. Could you give a few more examples on how you connected the user experience design aspect to the storytelling aspect? I presume, if I understand the question right. I think they're asking, user experience is about the experience in general, and then you have a narrative core to the experience. And I think the question tries to understand how you play. Where does the writer, the storyteller come into play in the user experience, more established methodology, if you wish?
Yeah, so this is a very long answer, so I'm gonna, keep myself.
I hope I did justice. Yeah. We'll try in two minutes, and maybe just give a hook, and then we'll have a follow-on in the bar later on tonight.
Sure. Okay. The main thing, when I say user experience, is how the person arrives at the place, is what is the process of putting on the glasses? Is there an installation? What happens as an experience in the glasses, and how it ends? And the user experience inside is where the spatial solution comes in. The spatial solution can be, I'm making a VR project. I was talking with Sandra Rodriguez from MIT the other day. They did a VR film on dogmatic and political systems, and it was about extremists from different, and there was something that it says in the project. There is only one way in extremism, and it's forward. And this is what they put in the project. So it was only about walking forward. You didn't have any other option. So this was their key, their experiential key or like in Notes on Blindness, you have one small movement, you have something that reveals a little bit with time in a very gentle way. So it provokes. So it's interactive, it's spatial, but it also provokes your experience. It's direct experience, but still fills into the creative and interactive part.
Yes.
So to come from the experience and pick up one thing that is active interactivity. It's not passive interactivity, not just sitting there and interpreting it in myself, but I'm going forward. There's a very thin balance and smooth balance.
Well, I think, as you say, there's quite a lot to tell about that, because you somehow place the narrative experience within a larger user experience framework, and one could reverse that as well and say, well, it's all about the storytelling. Whatever you do, the performance, the coming in, the putting that just preps you for the story itself, is part of the story.
Exactly, of course. The story, it's all about the story at the end. Clear. It has to be. It can be as immersive as it wants. It can be absolutely.
I think we have time for yet another question, which is, again, a very general one and has been asked many times, but let's see your angle on it. How do you see the cooperation between artists and technology? And more specifically, what is needed that artists are getting an easy access to immersive technology?
In example centers, platforms like ours, we have a couple of programmers, we have a lot of glasses, we invite people, also a lot of theaters, and give them the possibility to use them and to create with us. That's one way. It's not such a heavy technology, and again, it has become easier to create with funds available, but also programming has gotten a little bit more flexible. There is a better way to talk with programmers, and the pipeline is a bit clearer on how to create immersive storytelling. So it's not that unapproachable anymore. It's not only geeky stuff. We're entering cinemas, we're entering theater spaces, and I think, that's why we do this whole thing with our platform, to give possibility to meet people and to create a certain web of connections, and it also spreads around Europe and the globe, and that's why I'm also here, which I'm very happy to be.
Well, we are really happy that you were part of the event, and I think it was a brilliant presentation and an excellent set of questions that you've answered brilliantly. And to conclude, I think we see that the topics that you highlighted here are not necessarily new. They are discussed in various spaces, but I think you managed to really beautifully link a theoretical attempts to have a theoretical underpinning, understanding how our brain works and cognitive functions, and gradually move that towards examples of great storytelling. So thank you very much, Momchil.
Thank you very much. It was it was great. I could talk for 12 hours about it. So it was really like, yeah, put it in. Yeah.
We should find opportunities still. And now for our audience, we will take a 15-minute break. And hello and welcome back. We are entering now the panel of this session, and we are going to have two seeds, two shorter presentations. The first one is by Chien Chong and Derrick, and they will talk about VR and technology. Is it a marriage of convenience or is it a perfect marriage? And let me introduce the speakers. Chien is the creative director of Sidelines Entertainment and the playwright and director of its debut production, Murder at Monday Camp. He's an award-winning playwright and director, including the Singapore Dramatist Award and the Straits Time Live Theatre Award. His plays have been staged in Singapore, UK, Budapest, Taiwan, and Japan. He also writes feature film and for television channels, and has two collections of plays published containing the critically acclaimed Charged, one of the top 10 plays of all time in Singapore. So it's a great honor to have you. And Derrick is the executive producer and artistic director of the same company, Sidelines Entertainment. He's a graduate with distinction for RMIT in Australia and has been working in the Singapore media and entertainment industry in the capacity of producer and marketing director. He was mentored by the veteran theatre production and acclaimed Hollywood actress Tan Keng Hua, and Derrick was the marketing manager of Pandemonium Theatre Company before starting Sidelines Entertainment, their own company. Producing credits include the Asian premiere of The Edges, the musical, and William Golding's Lord of the Flies, and the virtual interactive play, The Curious Case of the Mississippi Parancan Treasure. Again, an honor to have you both here. They will be talking about the journey of their company, Sidelines Entertainment, which was set up in 2020 after they joined hands with the tech startup Actuality to create virtual interactive theatrical experiences, marrying gameplay, storytelling, and murder theater. Since then, both companies have created several genre-defining online experiences, pushing the envelope of storytelling and entertainment. Derrick and Chien, together with Warren Woon from Actuality, will share the ways in which they had pivoted in light of the pandemic, empowering the imagination in the digital realm. We will start the presentation with a short video giving a short overview of who they are and what they do, and then it'll be over to them. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation.
We are able to transport audiences into the theatre to experience the same live, immersive experience anywhere in the world.
Building a proprietary tech solution means that we have full control of the medium and we don't have to adapt our art to fit the platform.
We strongly believe that the stage of tomorrow is going to be a game changer.
And we can bring the arts to you wherever you are.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Derrick. I am the executive producer of Sidelines Entertainment. We are a theatre company here in Singapore, established in 2012, but we have pivoted because of the pandemic last year to become a creative studio producing immersive digital theatrical experiences, just like the one you saw in the video earlier. Before we begin our sharing, I just really want to say that we're really excited to be here and really want to thank the organizers for having us all the way. We're from Singapore, the other side of the world, and to join all of you here on this virtual global world stage. So, talk about technology. We are, we can all connected here. So before we begin our sharing, I'd just like to introduce our team and our speakers. We have my creative director of Sidelines Entertainment, as well as a award-winning playwright and director here in Singapore, Chien, and he will be talking about how he has evolved in the last 1 year to incorporate tech into his craft and art making. And also today, we also have with us the managing director of our tech startup partner Actuality, Mr. Woon, and he's going to come and share a little bit on the technological point of view on how they have been working with us and their experience working in the art sector. And finally, I will be wrapping up and sharing with you our upcoming production, The Curious Case of the Missing Peranakan Treasure, and how we have used art and tech and marry them together to form a unique experience. So without further ado, I would like to now hand over the time to my creative director, Chien, to share his story.
Please bear with us, audience. We are just preparing the next connection, so hopefully we'll be with you in a few seconds.
Can you hear me now? Okay, that was good. Okay, sorry, I guess this is technology for you. I'm Chien, I'm from Singapore, and I'm from the creative stage and the creative director of Sidelines. But I guess I'll just begin by telling a story. 2 years or a year ago during the pandemic, Singapore had a lockdown, and in those 2 months, theaters were closed. And I think one of the conundrum that we had was, how then do we continue theater as we know it? So Darren and I came together and we talk about solutions, and we talk about ways where we can bring creative solutions to our conundrum, our existential crisis, really. And I think what we came up with was the idea that maybe this is the time for us to think about ways to create new experiences, not just for audiences, but also for creatives, and find a new possibility and find ways to pivot. So I think during those 2 months in Singapore, what we had was that we had many theater companies broadcasting their archival materials, and even around the world. Singapore was watching things from National Theatre Live and other broadcast mediums and theater companies and performing arts companies broadcasting their archival materials. But I think what we realized from the experience is that it rendered the experience passive. And as an audience, you're watching something, a live medium, what's supposedly a live medium via a digital medium like a laptop or television. And I realized that audiences have very short attention spans, because the rules of engagement have changed as a result of the pandemic, and also the way that the medium or the way the live performances are being recorded and being broadcast like a TV or film, but it doesn't necessarily work in its favor. So Darren and I just came about and talked about, why not create a new hybrid? Why not think about new ways of creating a new experiences and drop the baggage of creating theater online, but really find a way to create the experience of watching with full interactivity and creating the audience from user's point of view, from a user's endpoint. And so we came up with the very first murder series, which was over Zoom, but what we did was that over Zoom. We was also a live, and it was pre-recorded live and also live. And also what we had was actually have the telephone, a telegram message, which was also part of the performance as well, where we had live interaction with the audience via telegram on their phones. And it was that production that got us thinking about ways to use technology, because as you know, even on a Zoom platform and whatever existing platforms there are out there right now is not made for performing arts. So we were dreaming about how then could we create something from ground up to create a technology that would suit the performing arts, and then one that would suit our purpose. This is where actuality comes in. And so we created a new version of Murder and Mandai Camp, and I would like to maybe play the trailer for you at this point to just give you a glimpse of what it looks like. So any point.
I'm Chien. I'm the director and playwright of Murder and Mandai Camp, the gameplay experience. When we first staged this in June, it was over a Zoom play. Of course, the interaction was very, very different and very, very limited. We have developed our own platform with different AR elements and 360 video capabilities. We're able to create a whole totally new immersive experience that combines elements of horror, escape room, theater, and murder mystery all roll into one. You play this on a laptop, tablet, or a desktop with a stable internet connection. And of course, it's a murder mystery within a 90-minute time frame. The mission is to find out who did it and how did he do it. It will almost feel like you're walking into an investigation room where all the evidence and clues are kept. Each player will experience the game very, very differently because we have embedded within the game many different pathways to find the murderer. We recommend that you get as many friends as possible to try to crack the case by taking on different pathways along the journey.
And thank you for the video. As you can see, that was the trailer for the Murder and Mandai Camp series, which was broadcast staged last year. And maybe describe the experience for you. Imagine walking into a 360-degree space, and in that space, you are allowed to pick up clues and rewatch videos, very much like how you are in an escape room, but now it's a digital realm on an internet browser. And along the way, you are able to play back certain videos and being able to interact with the videos and also the clues that you can find in the space. So it's really a 360 environment, and you can jump to many, many different rooms, like a site-specific production. And in these rooms, you can replay certain clues or watch a performance recorded on, of course, but then what it is that you, as the audience, you are now playing a role. You are playing the role of an investigator trying to solve the murder case. And that's the experience that we have kind of recreated for the audience as well, which is to create this sense that they are role-playing. I think that is what we are trying to do in the future stage, which is that we give the audience the opportunity to interact with whatever that we're giving them, and also to increase the interactivity in such a way that they are part of the experience and not apart from the experience. And I would guess at this point, I'll get Warren to share with us from a technological point of view, how he came about and how he helped us with that vision. Warren?
Thanks, Chien. Yeah, so it was a very interesting journey over a year ago, and we were actually also in the physical events industry, providing the technology for that segment. So we were pivoting and fast forwarding a lot of the technology forward to 2020, and one of which was the VR immersive experience. And after a few months of talking to potential partners, Sightlines was the one group that immediately was able to share a lot of similar thoughts with us. So in creating this technology, a lot of it in terms of the hardware is out there and perhaps the software, but while in working with the performing arts is a little bit different, because performing arts tend to be in more of the traditional realm. So a lot of the tech knowledge wasn't there. So it was a matter of understanding what their creative needs are and then matching the necessary tech. Some of the things that we were doing were not out in the market yet, so they required some engineering. For example, the gameplay that was developed as part of this collaboration. You are as if in an environment just like Momchil had mentioned earlier, as if you are in the murder scene, for example, collecting clues. So you're almost like in the play, but not really. And at the same time, you're collecting various clues in your clue bag, your evidence bag. So these are elements perhaps in an actual gaming environment, but you're not in that gaming environment. You're in a more realistic environment, be it in a room or in a moving surrounding. So there are various elements that come in that we needed to address. So for example, how to get various groups interacting. So some of the things that we were pleasantly surprised out of this was that people were actually creating separate WhatsApp groups to play the game together. So there was a bit of worry about how, you know, virtual events and virtual experiences can sort of so-called take someone out of the community. But we actually found that people are actually wanting to interact with one another. So this is something positive that we're hoping to sort of continue. Yeah. Back to you, TC.
Thank you for that, Warren. So let me let's Derrick to share what we have, and I think it's exciting lineup that we're going to share with the rest of the audience as well.
Thank you, guys. I'm just going to, like I mentioned earlier, share just some insights as a producer and what we have done in based on the last few projects that we have been working on. And you would realize also that my background is a little bit different. This is our upcoming show background, which is a virtual interactive play called The Curious Case of the Missing Peranakan Treasure. And I would like to just share 4 things or insights as a producer that I've learned using this new technology and creating and how we have evolved and pivot, right, from a theater company to producing virtual interactive theatrical experiences, and then use this current show that we're doing as a case study. So the 4 things I've learned, the first thing I've learned with technology and marrying both theater and the arts together is that we cannot use the methods of yesterday to compete in the economies of tomorrow. And I think enough have been said about how, you know, a virtual experience using VR, AR, and all these different technologies does not replace a live theater experience, and it will not. And we are not here to say that we're using technology to take over a live theater experience, but rather, how can we use technology in a way that enhance the experience, be able to engage a whole new audiences and even a younger group of audiences that are all found online. And especially with the pandemic, you know, in many in conversations that I've had with a lot of people, I realize that a lot of people are very resistant to that change or to just trying this new technology. So I think the first thing I've learned as a producer is really to be adaptable to change and to be very, very mindful of what is trending and what is the current landscape. So that's the first lesson I've learned. The second lesson I've learned is that technology shouldn't be used for technology's sake. And rather, technology is really a helper and enabler to tell great stories. Because here's the truth, right? In the theater, in live events, it takes a lot out of your audience to buy a ticket, to come to the venue, to invest that 2-3 hours to watch the performance. But online, it is so easy. It takes less than a second for anyone to just press that cross on the top right corner. And so then the challenge here for producers, directors, playwrights, creatives, and all of us is that how can we then ensure their attention? And it goes back, obviously, once again to storytelling. And it's always about the stories. It's always about content. Content is always key and king. It's always about having a hook, having an intriguing a storyline and concept. And so bringing now a case study of our upcoming production, the Curious Case of the Missing Peranakan Treasure, we knew we wanted to set it in a very interesting space. And so we've actually worked with a very iconic hotel here in Singapore, the Raffles Hotel Singapore, and we actually use that space and craft a narrative about a missing treasure, an expensive antique that has gone missing, and everybody is a suspect. And you have to then have 1 hour as a detective, as an audience member, as a detective, to come in to solve the mystery and create different hooks for the audience to keep them continually engaged. And that links to my third point of learning, which is in this virtual world, it is all about engagement, interaction, and immersion. And Chien talked about it earlier, about giving the audience the power to choose, but more importantly, also being able to role play and be part of that experience and your show. Because when they are part of the show and they're role playing and they're invested, then they will stick around and they will the chances of them clicking the X button at the top right corner is lower. Finally, what I've learned is that people love the power to choose, and people love the idea of choosing your own adventure. And so in whatever you're developing and incorporating the tech elements and stuff, make sure or do consider you giving that power to people to choose and be able to choose their own ending, almost like Bandersnatch, not the best example, but similar to Bandersnatch. And that is what we are exactly doing for our upcoming show. You enter the experience, you're given a map of the hotel, and you get to choose anywhere in these locations that you want to go in the hotel, and you can follow the characters and the scene will unfold. And in that sense, you're able to choose your own adventure, choose your own narrative, and decide how the story unfolds. And every audience interacting with it will have a different narrative or journey. And with that, we found that really got people really excited. People really get really engaged with it, and they really want, kind of like to determine their experience based on their terms. So that is what technology has actually given or opened doors for us as a creative theater company, and now as a creative studio, to be able to put something like that together. And so with that, we've actually come to the end of our presentation, but let me just share how you can find out more of, if you're interested to find out about our show, you would see it's here, the link, thefuturestage.com. Because we are going virtual now, it is on demand. It's anytime, anywhere. We're launching on 1st of April to the 30th of June. You can access it anytime worldwide, 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if you're interested, do check out our website. We'd love to have you join us for the experience. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Derrick and TC. Excellent presentation. And I'd like to ask the audience to not be shy and send us questions on all the channels that were presented earlier. You can send questions at the end of the talk, but also during the talk. We need your input to make the session excited at the end. And I think we're going to go, I suggest we're going to go straight into the second presentation. And then we have time to engage with our speakers and ask them your questions. Now, the second presentation is given by Anna West and David Callanan, who are talking about how they took a theater piece from stage to VR. They are member and founders of I Don't Love You Anymore, digital art and performance company, which centers around the partnership of two artists themselves. They've built among their portfolio of outputs, they've built a tower of luminescent pixels, designed animations to dance across buildings, created software to live stream content to audiences' phones, and even performed with a live fly with live reactive animation. So a very interesting portfolio of artwork. They have been finalists for the Oxford Samuel Beckett Theatre Trust Award. They are recipients of the New Creatives North Commission and winners of the BFI London Film Festival's Best XR Immersive Art Award in 2020, and their work is exhibited nationally and internationally, including this year at the Sundance Film Festival. In their talk, they will take you through the process of taking a piece, a theater piece made in 2016, and recreating it as an animated VR experience at the height of the pandemic and watched by thousands. Their film, To Miss the Ending, was premiered at the BFI London Film Festival and won the award I just mentioned for Best XR Immersive Art. Thank you very much for being here, Anna and David, and over to you.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Anna, this is David. We're the artistic directors of I Don't Know You Anymore. We make digital art and performance.
Yeah, and most recently we made, as was just introduced, a VR film called To Miss the Ending, which was based on a theatre production, which we made with another group called Theatre 42 about 6 years ago. Just so you've got some context, we're now going to show you a trailer of To Miss the Ending, which is the VR film.
I take full responsibility and accept the consequences of this procedure.
When I was a kid, my brother and I used to play by this river. We made boats for it and raced them. Later, when we grew up, I came back to visit, but it had stopped flowing. My friend Alice, it was murky and brown, but it used to flow and carry our boats. For a while, we'd walk past it and dream about living digitally. She said she was fed up of living in a world where you could get watches that monitor your blood pressure, get self-driving cars, but still couldn't get automatic ramps on public transport. Plus, imagine being bodiless. No calories to count, no chronic pain, and no men sending dick pics. Bliss.
I sat underneath this tree on the day of my girlfriend's funeral. She was attacked by humanity terrorists in broad daylight. I sat underneath this tree and carved her name on it. When the system fails, every tree has her name on it. The tree that I climbed with my dad when I was 7 has her name on it. The trees that lined the motorway on my way to work have her name on them.
Great, thank you.
So we've only got 20 minutes to talk to you about the process of taking a theatre piece and reimagining it for VR. So rather than delve deep down into all the how-tos, we're just going to give you an overview and an insight into some of the first questions we bumped into. So in the original theatre production, 5 performers built landscapes out of cardboard boxes, which were then projection mapped with block colour to look like voxels. The premise was that people had begun uploading their consciousness to a machine or a server in order to escape their reality. And now that server is dying or being switched off. David and I kept returning to this premise, and we kept thinking about it as a VR piece because it just fits. It's so perfect. You know, you put on a headset and you're suddenly outside of your own reality. So it just perfectly goes with that concept.
Yeah, and so eventually we pitched that idea, and we got some funding from New Creatives North and started making To Miss the Ending in February 2020. And the first thing we found out was some really great news, which is that there's tons of transferable skills and techniques from theatre making that work really well when you're making a piece of VR. I suppose bad news, although I don't know whether it's really bad news, is that there are some really big, strange additional questions that you need to answer artistically when you start making a world in VR, because the certainties and the rules of the real world are really plentiful, and the certainties of a virtual world are basically non-existent.
So one of the certainties of our reality and of a physical space is physics. So the reality of a physical space is already made for us, and the physics of that space are already made because they're the physics we use in everyday life. VR doesn't have a world until you make it. So the physics of that world, well, they're not really there, and they're for you to decide upon and create. We had like a conversation sat in front of our screen looking at the objects we've built to animate in this world, and having the discussion of, okay, so how does gravity work on these objects? I mean, you know, you might think that gravity acts in our piece the way it acts in reality, but actually that's not quite right.
Yeah, no. So as we were going through the work and we were like experiencing it and testing it ourselves, we found that actually if we just brought gravity down to like 2/3 of its normal pace, it made the world feel a lot more ethereal, which was kind of nice for the story, but also it slightly reduced the chaoticness. It like made it a more pleasant environment to be in. And so yeah, so that's what we went with. And then the next certainty that's given to you by a theatre is your space, right? So in a theatre, you've got the amount of space to use that is there in the theatre on stage. The very top of your play is the ceiling, and the very like the maximum width of your play is the width of the stage. And so we were having conversations about, well, what's the size and scale of everything in the VR version of a stage show? Like, you know, when the expanse is infinite, should this piece just go on forever? And how tall can the buildings be? Because in the stage version, the buildings were as tall as the performers could build buildings out of cardboard boxes. In VR, they could, you know, be thousands of meters tall if we wanted to, because it's all just in a game engine. So here's another place where you're creating the rules of the world yourself. And we found it really helpful to really set those rules and decide upon them before we properly embarked upon making it. So we created artificial restrictions on the space. In the case of To Miss the Ending and how tall the buildings could be, we decided that we wouldn't create anything or animate anything in VR that we couldn't feasibly, given enough time, build out of cardboard in the real world. And that sounds like a slightly arbitrary restriction, but when there are no restrictions and when there's no limits on what you can do, setting any limit we found was incredibly helpful in honing us and focusing us on the story and the aesthetic and the story that we wanted to tell.
And in the real world, the materials are given to you. So the material of our production, the stage production, was, you know, the stage that we've been provided with. And then we decided upon cardboard boxes. We made that decision because they were reusable, they were flat packable and sustainable. In recreating this in VR, you're not given those materials. So we had a decision to make about what we wanted to use. We could have just, you know, gone straight digital with voxels looking, you know, glimmering and digital in their digital world. But we wanted to talk to the language of that piece a little bit. We wanted to hark back to it. But we also wanted to lean into that digital world in the way we weren't able to do in reality. So we had a lot of weird, artsy, funny conversations, especially with our sound designers, you know, like, so we want these voxels to shuffle and move together like cardboard boxes, to sound kind of like that when they hit the ground or when they move together, and we want them to have that sort of weight. But you know, we also would quite like it if when the voxel river comes in, there's kind of a trickle. You can hear a bit of a trickle, but maybe that trickle could be like a memory because you're in a digital world, so maybe there's a digitalness and we're not quite getting the physical. We had a lot of those really artsy conversations, and luckily we were working with some brilliant sound designers called We Make Audio, and they were very up for those
conversations,
ridiculous conversations.
There was also a thing about like minimalism. So the theatrical piece is fairly like avant-garde and minimal in its aesthetic, and so on stage it's just cardboard boxes projection mapped with block color. That's the whole set. That's everything that is made. And so we wanted to keep that going. So everything in To Miss the Ending is cubes of various sizes, and they're all block colors. But when we first did that, we made them genuinely true block, like solid block color. And what happens in VR and in a digital space, if you do that, is you lose all sense of depth, of materiality, of like texture and surface. And so actually we ended up doing quite a lot of texturing on these block color cubes to make them feel a little bit more physical and a little bit more present, and to give you a better sense of depth. So actually minimalism in VR is a lot more maximalist than minimalism is in the real world. That's another sort of discovery that we found, isn't it?
Yeah. And another thing is directing attention. So in theatre, unlike in film, the audience have the ability to look wherever they like. That's quite similar to in VR. The viewer has the option to look wherever they like. And the way you manage that in theatre is that the performers direct your attention. So they work quite hard to tell you where to look and give you cues. But we knew immediately that recreating this in VR, well, physical bodies just don't fit very well in a VR space, especially in the story that we were telling specifically. So we decided to take our cue here from the audience member and from the viewer. And I think that's a really important thing, that, you know, we were listening to our viewer in that space and how they feel in that space. So, you know, these people in this story are kind of floating souls. They're bodiless. They've gone away from their reality, and that's very much how you feel when you're put into VR as well. And so we thought, you know, that's the perfect way to do it. We did test out, you know, clumps of dust being the characters, and they direct your attention around the world, but none of that fit. And we realized that that was the reason, because you as a viewer in this world, you're not connecting with your body either. So actually this bodiless space is kind of perfect.
Yeah. And beyond that, VR and To Miss the Ending is a solo experience, right? Whereas theatre and performance is often inherently a collective one. And we, you know, just obviously discovered that or knew that before we started making the VR piece. But that meant that in making To Miss the Ending, adapting it from a theatre piece, we had to lean into that isolation. We weren't ignoring it. We were trying to make you aware of your isolation, aware of your sort of loneliness, and tie that to the narrative that we were telling, tie that to this idea of uploading your memories and your brain into a computer, and then everything disappearing and eroding, and you losing all your memories, losing all your connections, and feeling quite alone and quite isolated. So I think that's another place where we were really listening to the way it feels and the like experiential nature of watching or participating in a piece of VR art, and making sure that that directly impacted and linked to the story that we were telling.
And one of the reasons these rules are so important, these norms that you should set yourself, is because of tradition. You know, in a theatre space, the theatre space is steeped with this tradition, with norms and rules, and although they are there kind of to be played with, but there's no missing that they are there. However, with VR, it's so new, it's such a new form that these norms and rules don't exist yet, and it's kind of up to us to sort of craft them a little bit. And this tradition can guide us in theatre, but it can also sort of hold us down a little bit and stop us from, you know, completely expanding the world. So yeah, that's just a really cool thing about VR, that it's so new that you can go into it and kind of make it your own. There's so much room for people to make their own traditions in this space.
Yeah, and there's also like a contextualization that happens in a theatre. Like when you walk into a theatre from the bar, you know what's expected of you in that space. You know what to expect usually of the space and of the performance. And although that is often really interesting when that's challenged, it does add a comfort level to being an audience member of you have a set of expectations. And so I guess we were as well thinking about that journey of like, well, what is the equivalent thing of when you walk from the bar into the auditorium? What's that like for the VR piece, and how do we curate that moment? So, you know, is it the menu system like is also themed and makes you feel at home and sort of introduces you to the world and the rules of this space? Yeah, so that's another really important thing, isn't it? And then I suppose the big overarching question that we were asking ourselves, and that's really important in transitioning work for theatre to VR, is what is the benefit of this work existing in VR? Why should there be a version of this in VR? Why shouldn't it just live in a theatre?
Why are we choosing this form to tell this story?
Yeah, and I suppose when we were trying to decide for ourselves, is this a worthwhile effort? Should we pursue this form? We asked ourselves a few questions, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but hopefully this gives a sense of what we think maybe is important in sort of addressing a story for VR. Is A, is the audience member necessarily present or located in the world of the story? Are they more than just an audience member? B, is the work or subject matter somehow benefited from the effect of VR as an audience member? Like, does it engage with isolation, for instance? C, does the work engage with a digital world in general? You know, does it fit? Does it feel at home in that space? And D, is the story attempting to position an audience member with a new perspective on the world? Because that's something that can be done really effectively in VR that's a bit harder to do in a theatre, in a collective space, because you experience it solo. So I suppose those are just a few questions. That's not at all a complete list. But that's then after deciding if the story needs to be in VR. When you're making the work, it's important, we think, to continue to challenge those rules, to continue to challenge yourself, to set boundaries, to set limits, to create a logic and a set of guidelines for your world. And those don't necessarily need to mirror the real world, but we do think that that's one of the things that we found incredibly helpful and important in making that transition. So hopefully that's been helpful.
Yeah, hopefully they can be helpful to you too. So that's about it.
Thank you very much, guys. It's such a crisp presentation and with some absolutely crisp drawn conclusions which could be applied. Some rules that some may adopt or not. But it's interesting that you try to generalize and deconstruct your experience and understand how it functions. And I think it's time now to invite TC and Derrick also on the stage, and to open the floor for questions. There's Derrick and TC, there he is. And oh, Warren, I beg your pardon, Warren. Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry. That's a big mistake of me. I owe you a beer, or whatever you wish to drink. Let's start first. There's quite a few questions that have already arrived, and I'm trying to put some order in this. And I'd like to start with the issue of liveness, and maybe also with asking what kind of genre are we talking about? Well, try to define the genre. But let's stay with liveness first. A question that was addressed to Anna and David initially was, what replaces the live moment in your VR experience, and how do the audience take that? And maybe just to prepare Derrick, TC, and Warren, you also talked about liveness, and I think you said that you're working with recorded footage, but people like to role play, and maybe that gives some angle into liveness. So I'd like you to discuss this issue for a little while.
Sure. So I suppose we can start, because it's maybe a really easy question for us to answer.
There is a very important moment of liveness in that piece, actually.
Yeah, and the piece was intended in conception to be a location-based experience. So audiences would experience it in a specific location, and in that version of the work, at the very end, the fact that you are, when you take off your headset, the room around you has been rearranged and reveals additional audience members. So there's a shift between isolation and loneliness into a collective experience. Now that isn't possible in current circumstances, and so we sort of had to challenge that question of how do we create that again in a purely digital way. And so in Misty Ending, as it currently exists, there's kind of two things that do that. One is that as you enter the work, you agree to share your name, and your name is then embedded into the world at certain points in the piece. So you leave behind a sense of yourself. So it's like people can feel your existence as they go through the piece, and people kind of twig like, oh, that's other people have done that, so I am also in this experience for other people. And then specifically right at the very end of the work. I don't know if you want to explain. Right at the very end of the work, you're invited. You're left with this kind of sea of memories, and at first it seems like they are memories that we have chosen, and that is true to an extent. But then immediately after that, you're invited to submit a memory of your own. And so again, there's a moment of realization that this sea of memories actually is a collective set of memories from everyone who has experienced the work before you. So we're kind of trying to engage with connecting people and having those kind of moments of connection without actually needing people to be.
And it engages with the subject matter as well. You know, like they're storing this place is storing these memories, so you're also generating memories in this space stored for you.
That's brilliant, and I like what you say about staged elements of the experience, and then but also allowing some little snippets of input from the audience, and then creating a larger feeling of liveliness and immersion. I think that's a very nice device that you've employed there. I wonder if that really functions, whether audience experiences could be evaluated, but I leave that just as a thought for now. And maybe moving to Derrick, TC, and Warren, maybe you could address this aspect of liveness in your production.
Maybe I'll just start, and then I'll get Derrick and Warren to share maybe later on. I guess at the early days, we talk about the piece and how one engages with the digital realm. We talk about the rules of engagement and how things have changed as a result. The medium has changed, and so the way that we do things and the way that we do theater or theatrical experiences have changed as well. So one of the things that we talk about within the team was, do we insist on creating live performances and presenting a production on a digital realm using live actors in the live. They are live, and this is what we wanted to do. But in the end, we went with the recorded medium because we realized that because the rules of engagement have changed, we could think about how we can make up our own rules when we engage with the audience as well. And in our research and in our development, we realized that we need to increase the stake for the audience when they are watching something. So they are no longer watching something passively. We want them to be a participant. So, which is why we describe our experience, our digital experience, as a gameplay experience, where you as an audience, you're no longer a passive viewer. You would have to connect the dots. You will have to go to a 360-degree video room, a virtual space, and you have to choose your own adventure. And that is the liveness in the performance, because the audience is live. Even though the material may not be live, but then because the material has created this whole mind map of possibilities, there's no one possible pathway to connect the story or to complete the story, which is what we did in our little experiment. Derrick?
Yeah, I think also just to add on, we at the same time we didn't want to make it a film, right? Because that's another genre altogether, and there's obviously a lot more people. I mean, there's a whole new industry altogether. So what we did was we made it a very conscious effort to hire theater actors, and in our acting or in the filming, really do a full take. So we're not editing anything. So we roll camera from the start to finish, and it's almost like in theater they actually kind of act, non-stop. There's no start stop, and there's no edits in there. So that in a sense create a little bit of realism, hopefully. Yeah, but also in our gameplay, a lot of times, when we play games, they're always in a 3D animation world. But what we are doing is bringing people into real life locations and with real actors acting.
Yes. Okay, that's an interesting device to have a long shot and no cuts to give the. That's an interesting point that you've done there. Warren, anything you'd like to add?
I think just to add on to the fact that one, like I mentioned previously, is the liveliness, the live portion of it really stems from the mutual interaction. So the one incidental effect that came out of this was, we got messages from friends that saying they were setting up private WhatsApp group, and They were interacting with one another while they were respectively playing the games. So when you're watching a live performance, most of the time, like in Singapore, you're watching a live performance, you're expected to be, you know, do not disturb, right? And a lot of times, if you needed to go to the bathroom, you have to leave the theater. So these are a lot of the limitations of the live events, right? So we don't really experience that in a virtual realm. And a lot of times we find that some of our friends actually came back again and again to watch the performance, or to watch the gameplay in a different way. So perhaps sometimes things they missed while doing it the first time, but as they were going through the content again and again, they were finding out different ways of consuming it. So these are some of the interactivity that we found out, you know, as a result of this the virtual gameplay.
Okay, you just gave me a cue for the next question, and I'll stay with you guys, and then I'll go back to Anna. What is the difference between an online theater and a multiplayer game session? An online theater that is kind of a gamified experience, because you have a quest, you have to discover who did it and how they done it. How do you describe this kind of blurred border? Is it a theater experience or is it a game? So
we don't know, right? I mean, we're really making up rules as we go along. I mean, it's just 1 year of this whole, you know, weird kind of timing. But I think that's why for us, we've always been telling people it's a virtual interactive theatrical experience, whatever that means. I think it encompasses everything to say that, yes, there are elements of virtual, there's elements of theater, there's elements of obviously interaction and stuff like that. But I think this opens up a lot of possibilities, because in the first production that we did, which is Murder at Mandai Camp, it was really purely more of like an escape game meets haunted house, because there's some horror element to it, and meets murder mystery, murder theater. For this particular one that we're showing right now, it's more of an Agatha Christie kind of novel inspired kind of, you know, the whodunit kind of thing, more towards towards theater play in that sense, but it's a virtual and there's interactive elements to it. So all I'm saying is that now that we have the tools to play with, we can create different concepts and use different elements of tech to present the experience.
I entirely accept that, and I'm not sure if you guys wanted to add anything. Anna, anything to say from David?
I mean, those lines are just becoming so blurred, aren't they? I think that's what's really exciting about these merging of forms. And I don't know about you, but in the UK, it's kind of taken the theatre industry a while to warm to tech, and also, you know, to maybe it's like a lot of artistic industries have found this, but I think game is still a weird bit of dirty word almost, like. Yeah, and I don't think that, you know, the boundary is particularly helpful all the time, because like, you know, if you think about immersive theatre experiences like Punch Drunk Make, like The Drowned Man or Sleep No More, like, are they a game or are they theatre? Because you're sort of playing a game, it's just you're there in real life. And the same thing with, you know, like the line between live art and theatre. Like, I wonder if these distinctions maybe stop interesting collaborations from happening.
I can't agree more with what you're saying, and then with Derrick's suggestion, let's just make exciting experiences, forget about labels, the audiences will want them, and then we'll analyze them when we have enough, and we'll find the right taxonomies. So yes, I think I like that a lot. Now I'd like to move on to the issue of being creative using a new medium, AR and VR, and one of the questions we got was, what are the limitations which restrict creativeness in VR today? Is it mainly the technology or anything else? And I'd like to start with you, Anna and David, because you've already told us how by restricting a bit the affordances of the medium, you are able to be more creative. So how can you address this question?
So I think artistically, we do think restrictions are interesting and provoke more interesting art. I think there are definitely restrictions in making VR that you don't get in making theatre, which make it harder. So for me, I think the biggest one is like flexibility and time, right? So in a theatre production, you can get to like a week before the show starts and you can kind of decide this is wrong and throw it all away and start again and just power your way through to like having something at the end of that week. But when you're making VR, at least for us, like it's a 3-month endeavor to just get to something that you can show to someone. So you really embed yourself into this is what we're doing. Yeah. And that's why I think we thought the process of making decisions right at the start was so important to us, because it made that thing not happen. of us
yes.
So this is wrong.
I can completely relate to that. I mean, guys, we are 1 week away from our opening of this show, and we Warren's other partner, our other tech partner, Creative Technologies, is working day and night to put everything together because, like in theater, when we say let's change a lighting cue, all right, let's execute it, and let's change the costume and whatsoever, which is bump in and everything else, which is so easier than really trying to deal with tech, because I think right now there is obviously film component that we have to deal with, and then we were working with, say, animators and all that kind of editors, and then taking it to our creative technologists to really build the entire show and stuff. So I think those are the challenges, and I really can relate to you guys, because that's what we're going through right now. But back to the question, because we're not necessarily restricted at this point in time, because we really want to explore, and I really strongly believe that technology is an enabler to tell great stories. And in fact, for me, it's quite of the reverse, because all of a sudden we realized that it opened up so much possibility, so many more doors and opportunities that we can try and play with, that a traditional theater, proscenium art kind of setting can't do, which I think that's why we are actually quite really excited for really combining this art and tech together. Yeah.
Okay. If Warren or TC want to interject, but only one, such that we keep a bit of balance in between companies.
TC has to run off because he has another prior engagement, so he apologized.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, Warren, do.
Warren, if you wish to add anything, because you kind of represent the technology end and your experience working with.
I mean, a lot of it. A lot of it, Derrick and TC already pretty know very well and also expressed already. I think for us at the end of the day, working with performing arts is rather new. We previously, the closest to performing arts was really like music concerts, music engagements. But working with TC and Derrick opened up a lot of questions, and we were trying to answer a lot of them. But I think at the end of the day, technology has to be an enabler. It shouldn't be a hindrance. So we're always trying to find easy ways for our work to be consumed. So a lot of times we're dealing with demographics that who are older and may not necessarily be very apt at wearing VR goggles and going into an immersive environment. And a lot of times they complain it makes them sick. So we want to make sure it can be consumed as simply as just picking up the mobile phone, the mobile device, and experiencing content that way. I think as long as we can make it easily accessible by all age groups, I think we've done a fairly decent job.
Yes, thank you. Maybe a few more directed questions to the actual productions that you've shown, and maybe we could plow through them quicker in the interest of time. I'll start with Anna and David. When in a real space, how many audience members could participate at the same event?
So we staged it initially with 6 audience members, and that was when it was going to be a location-based experience. They're sort of in their own private booths, and then those booths are dismantled while they're in their headset, and what is revealed is a completely different space.
Yes.
I mean, that was more, space and tech allowing. Like, we actually have a lot of dreams of, doing it in a space with 20 or 50 people, but it's all about what the tech can afford.
What resources are available. Okay, thank you. Sidelines, what do you see as added value for the theatre when you use your digital technology?
Oh, that's a very big question. I think obviously for now, there is a lot of restrictions with regulations in Singapore and worldwide, right, in terms of the limited number of people coming to the theater. So, you know, I think right now the tech offers like I said, a whole new opportunity for us to create theater. But I think moving forward, we really wanted to use, we're moving into this whole hybrid model of an on-site and online model, where you know, people get to then interact with a space and then use technology to bridge that, you know, the past and the present, or the past and the future, the past and the future. So I think it's playing with those eras and timelines and different realms that is now possible with technology, and that's something we want to investigate when, you know, regulations are a bit more lax.
Super. Going back to I Don't Love You Anymore. By the way, I want to have the final question on you. Why the name? But don't answer that yet. One of the audience members is really excited about Not to Miss the Ending, which she saw at Sundance, and is asking whether you would be aiming or interested of adding interactivity to it. I think there already is some element of interactivity, but whether you want to develop that.
Yeah. So we made the whole thing we made in about 6.5 months, and so we didn't add like, you know, we thought about making the whole world touchable and liftable and movable, and basically we honed ourselves down to let's make a non-interactive world really well, rather than try to overreach and miss. So that's why you can't pick up any of the cubes and do things like that. I think we're now, I think, pretty happy with the work the way it is, and I think we're excited to move on and make a new project and work on new things. And I think the next thing we are going to make will be really interactive. I think that's something that we really want to investigate and really want to go sort of all in on. But yeah, I suppose To Miss the Ending was a stepping stone for us towards a more fully interactive.
And I do think that sometimes you can slightly rush into interactivity, actually. In terms of in VR as well, because it's a possibility and it's a new possibility. It's very exciting, and sometimes you know, we spoke to a few people as they were watching it, after they watched it, and actually people do like to sit back and let a world completely consume them. That can be quite enjoyable. So I think we wanted to just let that world do that.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. That's a lovely answer, and obviously many times less is more, and you've proven it here. Back to Sidelines, you filmed your entire building as a virtual space 360, and you also have camera on stage. How do actors and spectators react to this?
We tell all our actors that they should continue performing like how they would be acting in a theater show. So they will not need to worry about the camera or favor the camera and stuff like that. The camera will move to favor them, because the camera is playing the audience member, so to speak. So we never had an issue with or never told our actors once to worry about the camera. So thereby retaining the whole theatrical element of acting. With regard to the audience, because it's a virtual audience, or they're watching it from home, and the cameras are really small, so we're using the GoPro and 360 cameras and stuff. So it's not really like the big film cameras, so it's not really kind of intrusive in the scene.
In the space.
In the space. But what they get to do is to toggle between different cameras to see different angles. So they now become the director and decide what angles and shots they want to watch, thereby once again putting the power back in their hands.
Okay. Yes, it's curious to hear that you've instructed the actors to act as if the cameras weren't there, because what I understand is that in live theater there are two schools of thought. One, like the one you suggested, but there is one which suggests you should be aware of the cameras, and in directing you direct such that you maximize the potential of but it's interesting to hear that you've taken one route. Maybe one final question. If we started a bit earlier, so we don't need to stretch too far. And the person who's asking it says it's a philosophical question for all of you. With which hope, which vision does the audience leave your performance?
For To Miss the Ending, the vision we hope that people leave, I mean, in many ways, it's completely up to you how you interpret the work we've made, and you can, whatever you leave with is valid and important. So kind of whatever you leave with, that's good for us, as long as you've left feeling something. But I suppose the intention of the piece is that you leave with a newfound and newly discovered excitement for the real world and for physical interactions and connections, and that you've got a reinvigoration of like physical embodied experience.
And the little things that make up a real human life.
Yeah.
Very beautifully said. Derrick?
I think for us, the truth is we are a very young nation in Singapore, and you know the arts and culture is still growing here. So our main vision actually for Sightlines, and even with Warren in actuality, is really to engage our audience and really reach out to new audiences that will never ever step into the theatre, just because it's really not the culture here in Singapore. To really reach out to them and be that bridge. And at some point, hopefully bring them to the theatre. And that's, I think, purely our vision and mission for us here.
Thank you. And Warren?
Well, you guys answered very well. But I think for me personally, you know, over the past few months this year, talking to a few different stakeholders, I think for me personally for 2021, I would like to do something that can help preserve some of our heritage, our culture. Maybe not related to performing arts, but more so in terms of our museums, our archival, our heritage, things that we can, that were previously not so conducive to the younger population. Maybe we can make it more exciting now for them to come enjoy. So things like that.
Okay. Well, again, thank you ever so much. It's been inspiring. We had a lot to learn from two very successful productions. I think that's the way to push it forward rather than just wandering and pondering. Do things, make them attractive, and that would generate more creative thought and more interest. So thank you very much for everything. And in line with the last question, let's hope that we've inspired audiences with your interventions, and that new, possibly better pieces will still come in the future.